Welcome to Geeks and Jocks, a podcast that focuses on video games, film, television, and sports. And now, for the person who is in charge of this podcast, here is Ryan Sullivan. Hello and welcome back to Geeks and Jocks, and we have made it to episode 5, and I can't believe I've made it that far. And with that, let's talk about what the plans are for this podcast. So this episode here, this is airing December 4th, and in 2 weeks' time of that episode, I'll be at episode 6, and then episode 7 won't be until January 8th, so I'm going to enjoy the holidays, enjoy Christmas, and enjoy New Year's, and after that, get back on board January 8th. So that's what to expect for the next month or so. So with that, let's begin with one of the things that I just heard about recently in the last 24 hours, and that is the sudden passing of Stephen Hillenburg. Hillenburg was a guy that worked for Nickelodeon for a good amount of time. He was a guy that worked on episodes of Rocko's Modern Life and worked on the show during that show's entire run, and eventually he would create in 1999 SpongeBob SquarePants, which it'll be sad, 20 years come May of 2019, 20 years since that debut episode, and Hillenburg won't be around. Really tragic. I mean, ALS is just, it's a really sad disease that really hurts people, and I hope one day that there is a cure for that. And to me, if you were to ask me my favorite Nickelodeon cartoon, it would be Rocko's Modern Life. And Hillenburg was one of those guys that was instrumental in creating funny episodes that were consistent in getting you laughs and making fun of the modern day world. And it's like him and a number of the writers, and even the creator Joe Murray, they just created a memorable set of characters, quotable lines, stuff that feels relatable to the world today, and they just did an amazing job with it. And it's one of the very few Nickelodeon shows to me that holds up quite well compared to most of these other shows in the 90s. And of course, you got to talk SpongeBob, because it's basically a lighter toned Rocko, but I think it's got a bigger depth of characters, a bigger sense of community with the town of Bikini Bottom. Very quotable, very funny, and my favorite episode of SpongeBob would have to be Band Geeks, because it's very funny, it's consistently hilarious, and the end of the episode is probably one of their greatest endings to an episode of the show. And those first few seasons when Hillenburg was involved, I mean, these are amongst some of the greatest stuff for not just Nickelodeon, but cable TV, and really for cartoons overall too. And it's a shame he left following the first SpongeBob movie, because that show started declining real fast, and to me it seemed to rely more on gross out humor, and just felt like it tried to emulate, personally I think it tried to emulate Family Guy too much. And with that, it's just I really haven't watched the show in, I'd say, a good decade or so, but good 10 to 14 years, because it was just, they just dumbed the characters down so much it just kind of became unwatchable. It just seemed like they were just reusing some of the same plot lines over and over, and just shame really. But those first few seasons, I mean, with Hillenburg involved, those were some of the best stuff that was ever created for Nickelodeon. And spinning into that, I hope people the last few weeks enjoyed their Thanksgiving and enjoyed, the meals that they had, and maybe some of the football that's been on, and you enjoyed, for some of those, they enjoyed the Black Friday shopping and trying to get stuff at a reasonable price. I'll tell you this, this is unbelievable with what I heard. Digital sales on Black Friday were higher than people going on foot, because that strikes me as something that we could see in the foreseeable future, because the way online is, I feel like companies are embracing the stuff that online brings to the table, because for people it's, you don't have to go anywhere, you don't have to waste your money on gas, you're not waiting in 20-degree coldness, it's not snowing, it's not raining, and you can be able to find what you want, click on it, put it in your cart, make the purchase, and there you go. And you just gotta wait for it to ship. And but I think there is still a joy to going there and getting that product immediately compared to online. But I think more than enough companies are aware of trying to get people to buy their products, and if they can do it via online, and they can certainly enjoy a good holiday season. And there is quite a few companies lately that have been on the verge of bankruptcy or needed like a huge holiday boost. And one of those examples is Sears. Now, I probably haven't been to a Sears department store in probably a very, very long time. And if I do see a Sears, it's about 10 miles where I live, and it's more about appliances and all that, like dishwashers and washing machines and all that. Last time I went to a Sears that was more than that was probably almost 20 years ago or something, when they had like everything that you wanted. And just the failure to adapt in all these competitors as well. That's what's hurting companies like Sears. It's just, and not, maybe even probably stuff internally like bonuses given to all of them higher ups, the probably putting too much in stocks and bonds and all that. Or borrowing too much. That's the sad thing of these companies. They think they can pay off in such a quick hurry because they are a product that people know, and they assume people love them so much they'll keep going to them. But in today's world, that's not the case. And then you have a place like, say, JCPenney, which has been struggling a bit at times, and they needed a huge boost for the holiday season. Whether they get out of this unscathed or not is another story, but we'll have to see what happens. Last year was stuff like Toys R Us, and I actually heard they might be making a comeback. I think someone bought out a name recently, and they're going to try and bring back Toys R Us to the U.S., which would be, I guess, kind of nice, because you don't really have many places that would sell toys. The only place really around me is Walmart, but it was probably like 15 years ago where I lived, we had KB Toys, and maybe a couple other places where you could buy toys. But just overall, I think people are ready now for the online embracing, and it just, there's more to life than just buying all these products. Thanksgiving typically is, you spend it with your family, you spend it with people you get along with, and you just enjoy the time you have together before you do your before you do stuff like Black Friday shopping or going back to work. And yeah, I'll tell you about them football games that came around for Thanksgiving Day. I'll tell you one thing: the NFL can be so different in a matter of months, and I think that's going to be the case with the Washington Redskins, with them being 6-5 now, or at the time of this recording, probably will go down to 6-6 when they face Philadelphia I mean, this is being recorded November 29th, just to let people know. But for that, this is unique in itself because the Redskins look like they had the best chance to represent the NFC East in the playoffs, and then they lose Alex Smith. And this is just pure coincidence or not, I don't know. But Smith had a really bad, gruesome leg injury that happened on November 18th. Now, it was at the 40-yard line, and the score for that game would be similar. But in 1985, November 18th, a Monday Night Football game between Joe Theismann's Washington Redskins against the ferocious defense of the New York Football Giants. Lawrence Taylor sacks Theismann, breaks his leg. Theismann's career ends around the 40-yard line, and actually the Redskins won that game in 85, 23-21, and that was the same score for the game against the Houston Texans, only with the Texans winning. And same area, like 40-yard line, around that same spot of the field, although different stadiums. And it's not Lawrence Taylor, it's J.J. Watt doing the damage on Alex Smith. And, it could be just more than just a mere coincidence, but, I mean, it's a scary thought, and, honestly, their chances of making the playoffs are pretty slim now. But, for the most part, there probably hasn't been a thing like that since the 3-16 game where Tim Tebow won a playoff game against the Pittsburgh Steelers back in the 2011 season, throwing for 316 yards, 31.6 yards per completion, and all this stuff relating to this. Because he's very religious, one of his favorite Bible things was John 3:16, and when that happened, when that game was finished with that game-winning touchdown, a lot of people started looking at all this 3:16 stuff, and they find all the weirdest stuff for that. And, it's unbelievable, the NFL lore that occurs with this stuff. And with that, I don't really have much else to say other than bundling up during the winter. And that's one thing I'll talk about, the cold. And Thanksgiving, it was about 0 degrees Thanksgiving night. Like, it was probably the coldest that I've seen for November, probably in ever. Because, I mean, there's been times where it's been like 15 degrees in my life. 15 degrees in November, 20 degrees. And that's to be expected. But to have it be that cold around that time, that's a little unusual to me, but not unusual in that sense of having that cold of a temperature. And having snow, I mean, yeah, sure, we get snow a number of times throughout the winter, but for the most part, really, I thought we were going to have like some huge snowstorms. And we kind of did for a little bit one time during November, and it was pretty treacherous, and just I had to be careful driving and all that, and man, it always makes me think about some of these things that happen in school, and waiting to see whether schools will close or have these hour or 2-hour delays. And that was always one of the intriguing things with going to school during the winter was, you look at it and you think, oh, I want school to close. I want school to close. And sometimes it may not always be that case. And that was one thing I hated about delayed starts to school, because they would try to cram everything in for the day, and it would be like 20-minute classes or 30-minute classes depending on the delay. I didn't really have too many 1-hour delays in high school, but we had quite a bit of 2-hour delays, and they would cram everything into 20-minute classes, and there was some overlap at times for getting people into the cafeteria for lunch. and it just was. I feel like they did understand what to do, but I think at times it kind of got out of hand, and the way they had the bell system, it was ran electronically. So once it hit a specific minute, like a specific part of the day, it would ring, and they would have to, on the delayed starts, they would have to do it manually, and there were times where it's like they forget to manually ring it, and it was kind of a little frustrating, but yeah, you had to get to your class within 3 minutes, but it definitely was frustrating at times, especially for those 2-hour delays. And I'll tell you, the worst thing comes when it's a full day of school. You're thinking, okay, let's get through the day, do your classes, get your homework done, and all of a sudden you hear that, oh, due to blah 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 blah, weather, we're going to be closing, and then they try to cram everything in within like 3 to 7 minutes, and it's like you try to. It's like it's not even. I mean, maybe they might try to give you homework, but you can't teach anything within 7 minutes. Maybe you might teach 7 minutes of stuff too. I think it might be easy to have elementary school kids learn within 7 minutes, but not high school. And lunch was pretty complicated there too. It's like you don't even have 10 minutes. You can't even wait in line to that quickly and get your food immediately, And I mean, after that, it's like you try to eat as quick as you can and then get to whatever classes you have to go to. And I don't think they had a good grasp on it, but I mean, you got to get people out within a reasonable time before snowstorms get worse and all that. And I don't know, it just wasn't the easiest thing to handle. And I'm not sure if people have had this kind of experience before, but in college, I had my first college. I had a few days where classes were canceled on campus, and my first college, it was one of those areas where they get blanketed with tons of weather, and regardless of the time of the year, they get tons of rain. And I'll tell you a funny thing. Actually, there was a time in it was around April where we were getting a pretty bad rainstorm, and it was raining pretty heavily, and there was a guy, one of the people in the dorms, going, "Bring on the rain," or something like that, and he was really happy to be wanting to hear these warnings and all that, thunderstorm warning, and just, in retrospect, it's pretty hilarious, But it would rain a lot during April, and actually we had a span where it was right around hurricane season, because September 2011, it was one of the hurricanes that came through, and it rained tremendously all around, and I didn't have any umbrellas on me because I didn't think it was going to be that bad of a day weather-wise, but I had to basically put my backpack above my head, get down to my dorm, and try to get dried up from being drenched in that rain for a good 2-3 minutes. So brutal. But then there's the winters where it would snow for a good amount of hours, and you have a foot of snow. And because it was an uphill campus, and even though the college had connecting areas where you could go from one hall to another, I mean, some people would still have to go outside and move uphill, downhill, and I mean, there was so much snow one year. It's like we had a day or two of classes being canceled, and I learned that lesson the hard way one day with trying to. Well, it wasn't so much the class. I'm thinking maybe the campus might still be open somewhat, but it was a community college, and if they were closed for the day, they would have everything closed, And it was nice to have winter at times, but when walking up to the campus, it was pretty brutal. It wasn't just the snow; it was there were times where it was very bitter cold out, and the wind was just, it would be constantly blowing in my face, and it was like, and it would bother my face, it like tear me up, and like a bit of snot coming out of my nose, and there were times where I felt like it froze. I don't know, just like it would just freeze, the tears in my eyes and the snot coming out of my nose. I mean, you had to like get up to the campus rather quickly before you really have like something like a bad frostbite or something. But anyway, either way, it was like, I think I had a better winter the second year there because it wasn't as bad, and it wasn't like a brutal winter. We actually had some times where it was like, it felt pretty warm, I think. But yeah, I mean, there are times where they would shut the campus down, but the way that they did it was like they would treat the next day like it was the previous day, I think, or if not, they would treat it like it was one of those days, like a Monday. If it was like a Wednesday, they could treat it like a Monday or something. I don't know. But my second college, like, we didn't have any closures. The only time we ever really did was when, I think it was Hurricane Sandy came, and it was very windy, very, very windy out there. But it really didn't do anything, and I don't really think it caused any major power outages. But regardless, they sent a lot of people home, and I was taking a class, I think, during a part of the day, and what had happened was that they started thinking, oh no, this could severely hurt us as a whole, and for the most part, there could be numerous power outages to a number of places, and maybe tons of downed trees and whatnot, maybe some bad rain that could flood, because they were coming off the year before with tons of flooding and all that. But it didn't really do anything, but still, having a day off, it was pretty nice for the most part. But there were times where it's like, because this college, my second college, was a college in a college town, they didn't really close often, or if not close ever. And the thing was, it's like most people could commute from the town to the college, and you had some people that didn't really have much choice but to commute from other towns to the college. And there was only one time in college where I didn't go to class because of the weather, and it was one of those days during the winter where, for the most part, the place was covered with snow, and it's like, I don't feel comfortable driving. I don't feel comfortable driving up to campus. I don't want to get myself in an accident or any of that. So I basically turned around, went home, and just basically enjoyed the rest of my day without having to worry about slipping and sliding and all that. I mean, and I feel like at times certain colleges and schools, they don't give a care about safety. They only care about making sure the day goes smoothly with everybody being there, and I don't know, and that pales to this ice storm that we had back in like 2009, and this was in high school for me. So what happened was that there was this major ice storm, and my father, who worked a night shift and came home around 7:30 or so, I mean, he did not like the weather. He thought it wasn't suitable enough for driving, and just about every school except mine and another closed. And this was one of those times where it's like, this was one of the only times it's like we played hooky for a day, but for the right reason. It's like, just like only 20 students went to school that day, and just about everyone else is like, no, we're not taking you to school. The roads are not safe. What's the point? What's the point of us getting hurt just because they keep the school open? It's like, how do you allow that? And thankfully my dad wasn't the only person that was smart enough know that the roads aren't safe. School logic, I guess. But but for the most part, I would say I would hate to see in the papers one day of a bus turning over because they were on a road that was very slippery and they couldn't really turn or any of that or whatever. And that is one of the things that, the day, it's like I would love to be a parent one day, but I would be scared if I put my kid on a bus during the winter. I would, because it's like, my town, it's full of, like back roads and narrow turns, narrow roads, and just sharp turns too. It would bother me a lot, if my own child was on a bus and it got turned over. It would terrify me a lot, and just if they were to get hurt, I would be spooked. I would be spooked for a good while, and I would want to do whatever is necessary to make sure that my child or children, if I have one day I do have children, I want to make sure they get there safely. I would want to take them to their school, pick them up maybe, and I don't know, I think it's just the instinct in me. It's just protection of kids, And I really, I just hope schools have the sense of knowing when to close and when to stay open, because, I feel like at times most schools are wise enough to close, and then there's a few, like my high school, that just don't understand the idea of why most other schools close and whatever else. And, whatever applies to them, I guess. But there'll be lots of criticism if you make the wrong decision, really. So with that, I guess that'll wrap up episode 5 of Geeks and Jocks. Don't really have any idea what episode 6 will be, but it'll probably be more like cold winters and being sick during the winter and whatnot, or maybe just plain old sickness in general. But you know what? With the holiday season coming along, I'll be up with another episode on December 18th. And with that is episode 5 of Geeks and Jocks. I'll see you on the next podcast.